hands, we all have them, right? Okay. And what we're going to talk about tonight is how hands tell us, they're maps that can lead us straight to our right life. So how many of you have thought about life purpose? What is my life purpose? Okay. All right. So pretty much everybody here. The thing that's really interesting about this information, imagine if you were trying to carve like an ice sculpture. And let's say that you had a blunt object. This is how most of us, the technology that we've had to date to explore life purpose has been. What hands gives us is it gives us almost like a scalpel or a way to more carve it much more thoroughly, much more directly, much more, it's like laser beaming it in. So there's two maps. One map was your fingerprints. It was imprinted 5 months before you're born. In fact, when the fetus is developing, you have these long things that look like popsicle sticks with a big bulb on the end, almost like a lollipop, right? And that forms first so that your fingerprints can start forming. So you have these big bulbs and the fingerprint starts forming. So we could theorize that it's when the soul moves into the body, when the eternal agenda matches up with the human agenda, that this information comes in. So it's actually all very simple. There's only 4 different kinds of fingerprints that are available. There's one that looks like a swirl, like a circular going inward like a bullseye. There's one that looks like you're threading a needle. It's like you're coming in one side and out the other. That's called a loop. And then there is a tinted arch, which looks like a gentle rolling hill, except for with a little temple underneath of it. And then there is an arch, okay? And all of the fingerprints are made up of these 4 combinations. So your most complicated, so the bullseye is very complicated. The loop is the next complicated. The tinted arch is the next, and then the arch being the least. So your highest print, your highest ranking print, is your life purpose. Every finger stands for a different zone of life. One is more inner world, one hand is. The other hand is more outer world. So if your most complicated print is on, say, an outer world, that's where the area of fulfillment lies for you. So the most complicated is your area of fulfillment. The least complicated print is your area of challenge. So this is your soul's agenda, soul psychology, and it's written in your fingerprints 5 months before you're born. And the thing that's beautiful about this information is it works for when you're 5, it works for when you're 15, it works for when you're 40 or when you're 80, when you're 90. As long as you have fingerprints, which everybody does keep their fingerprints. I've had a lot of people that tell me, oh, I couldn't be printed by the fingerprint people for their passports or whatever it was that they were doing. But it turns out, or a criminal check or whatnot. But I can usually always find people's fingerprints. Just because their ink didn't pick it up doesn't mean it's not there. So your fingerprints never change your entire life. And life purpose is on a spiral. So it's a little bit different for you when you're 5 than when you're 10, than when you're 20. And it just continues to grow with you. But the thing that's really beautiful about this information is it's really custom tailored exactly to you. And it shows you a way through into your most fulfilled life. So it's really beautiful, multifaceted information. The other map that exists in the hands is the actual shape of the hands. And let's just theorize for a minute that you're a thinker, right? So if you're a thinker, your hand's going to grow taller. Okay, there's other ways that can happen too. If you're a doer, your hand's going to be shorter. If you're a feeler, your hand's going to be a different way. So what happens, and then there's the fingers, which is the kind of role you take in life, and it can be different from inner world to outer world. But the thing that's really, really fun about the hands is that you can get into archetypes, and you could have the archetype of the judge or the architect or big mama, right? So there's lots of different archetypes, lots of big ideas, things like that. The thing that's really wonderful about that is if you can decipher 2, 3 archetypes out of someone's hands, you can have a really, really good idea of what kind of person the person is. And even this brings a lot of clarity for people when they're not sure how they're different from everybody else. So it's really beautiful. I've been studying hands for over 3 years now. And it's been through the contrast of sitting in class, being different than everybody in the class, getting to know them and to understand that, oh my gosh, I'm looking at a completely different window than everybody else is looking out of. And some of us have some similar windows that we look out of, and those of us that do, we form clubs, and we have, you know, like there's left-handed plumbers unions, right? If people conglomerate together. But there are some that are very rare, some archetypes that don't exist in nature that much. So it's very fun and beautiful. It's like unwrapping the package of yourself. You can also see the challenges that lie in the hand, because with every personality type, there is a challenge that comes with it. So you can't separate that energy from both ends of the stick. It's got the strength and the beauty of it, and it's got the challenge of it. So let's say if someone was a doer, and really practical and grounded and loyal and hardworking, okay? When they're looking out that window, they're looking for loyalty from other people as well, okay? So it's almost like we formed our personalities to get what we wanted, okay? And so, but often that's not the way it works, because we're filling a role, then we are attracting a bunch of other people that are very different than us into our lives and into our circles. But let's just say someone that is very loyal and hardworking, very, that they can tend to be really black and white in the way that they approach life. Like it's either this way or this way, and there's no in-between ground. There can also be a little bit of criticalness that can come in. So a little bit of stubbornness, especially with that particular personality type. So I'm sure that we all know some people like that in our lives, but they have a strength to add to the world, and they also have a challenge to work around. And so it really does change the way, when we look at personality, this is the earthly influence, right? The personality that is formed. When we look at that personality, it's also part of your big picture, because it's who you are, it's how you see the world. And so integrating that into your full picture and lining that up with your life lesson, your life purpose, your challenge, working all of that together. Let's say if you put all of those lenses up, you could actually see your right life standing right before you. If you were to integrate all the parts of you into, we're talking perfect work. I mean, work that fits you. Work that you don't have to have a vacation from to, that you have to create vacations so that you can get away from it. Work that actually is fulfilling to you, right? Not that we all do need vacations, but I think a lot of us dream about it a lot more than we probably maybe could if we created a job that really fit for us. The more complicated your hand gets, the harder the job is. It's almost like you have to custom create one for yourself. But relationships that support you. There's a lot of aspects of right life. Your personal, really joining everything together. But I see there's always two expressions. Like there's either the okay life or there's the really great life. And what I do mostly as a hand analyst is encourage people and try to inspire people to get into their right life, to get into the one that really, really they're excited about, that they're loving life in general. Because I believe that as human beings, our first decree is to love life, and to love in life is the second. The third is life purpose. And both of those things the first two things are possible by us actually getting involved with our life purpose. So if you can imagine, have you ever seen kids play a game of soccer? The goal is to do this, right? We're gonna get the ball down and we're gonna kick a goal in, right? Have you ever seen 4-year-olds play soccer? It's not very purposeful. They're just over here doing this, over here doing that. And I find that most humans are kind of that way. not really going for something in particular, not really going for the gusto. So that's a lot of what I try to help people with. So the two maps are there. The lines on your hands change. So your personality changes over time. It usually changes if there's some really significant event that causes you to say, okay, I'm not doing it this way anymore. Okay? But most of the time, your personality, it can slowly evolve over time. We've got people that were printed at 20 and they're a lot different at 40. The personality kind of grows and adapts to suit your needs. But most of the time, if you're this kind of person, you most always likely will be that kind of person. It's very rare to see people change their complete orientation of life. But one thing that this information gives us is it gives us incredible tolerance for others. Because my hand teacher, and I'll talk about him in just a minute, but he says that nobody's doing anything to you. Everybody's just being their type. So if we were to make a list of all the people and all the things that they were doing to hurt your feelings or block you or whatever, if we were to compare that to their base personality, likely they would just be being their type. So we're all looking out a different window, and it is really, I thought that most people thought like I did, that most people behave the way that I did. I kind of have my base personality is a nurturer, okay? So I'm one of those rare individuals who does have genuine universal love. Like, I just want to nurture everybody, right? So I'm stuck in this nurture. So, for me, when I've looked at people that I've judged, it's the people that aren't nurturing. It's the people that aren't, taking care of other people's feelings and stuff like that. But, it's really interesting to see that, oh, okay, they've got a completely different way of looking at life and a completely different purpose here and a completely different set of rules that they live their life by. If you talk to the hard workers, you become a good person by working hard. If you talk to the thinkers, you become a good person by researching the world and understanding the way to go and the right, what's really real, right? Proven through science, okay? If you are a feeler, feelers believe that people who are caring are the good people in the world. So we all have a different idea of what being a good person is. So it's been an eye-opener to me to see that, oh, wow, there's a lot of different ways to look at life. And the thing that's really wonderful that I can help people do with hands, there's a few different things, but I can help people get in alignment with their right life. And I can also help people deal with the really big triggers. So most of us have heard the analogy of just the tip of the iceberg, right? So we've seen the pictures where there's this huge iceberg and it's tipping out of the water and it seems so humongous. And then you look down beneath and there's it's 15% that's sticking out and there's this huge mass under the water. And the thing that's really interesting, because I'm also a hypnotist and I'm also do Psych K and work with belief systems and bringing that together with this handwork, I've been able to see that there is, through those lenses that, they say that all of our programming is put into place by the time we're 7. As far as what is possible in the world, what we can do, what we can't do, our personal valuation of ourselves is all set in place by the time we're 7. So this information, we all have people in our lives that all of a sudden they're acting like a 3-year-old, right? And we're like, oh my gosh, what happened? I thought this was a reasonable person, right? They were triggered. And they truly are acting like a 3-year-old or running on the program of a 3-year-old. And there's so many, there's between the conscious mind and the unconscious part of ourselves, there's like a barrier. So not all the information comes up and goes back down. It's not just an open way. So the emotional aspect of ourselves cannot, our 3-year-old didn't get the memo that, oh yeah, we are beautiful. Oh yeah, we are good enough and we can do that, right? So that 3-year-old didn't get the memo. So part of what hands gives me is it gives me the ability to pinpoint very easily the area that the person can work on to stop being triggered. And being a natural nurturer, this gives me a little bit of special insight, because if you can go to that aspect of yourself and nurture that aspect of yourself, then it no longer is triggered. And for me, myself, this has revolutionized my life. My first reading that I had, it was who I really wanted to be. It was who I knew I was deep down when the information came forward. And what was cool about it is it told me what was standing in the way and what the obstacle was, what I needed to do to move, to be more myself in the world. So I was very excited about this information. I started studying it quite a few years ago. But what was really interesting about how the information came forward, I mean, you guys have heard of palmistry, correct? Like the old hand reading. What my teacher did is he came across that information when he was in college. Did you guys know that it used to be a part of every educated person's education to study hands? Socrates was really into hands. So was Hippocrates, who is the father of medicine, right? Was also really into hand reading. Socrates taught, he found some letters, some information in the letters of Hermes, at the altar of Hermes or whatever, that was recovered. He found information about hands and taught it to Alexander the Great, who would then actually look at his officers' hands so he knew which better place to put them in his army. So, hands have been around for a long time, even in the Chinese cultures and a lot of the different cultures in the world. Hands has been something that has been very respected. And believe it or not, it's even in the Bible. In the Bible, there's a scripture, I believe it's in Hebrews, that says that God put signs and symbols in your hands so that you know what you're here to do. Okay? There's another scripture in Proverbs that talks about our giftings, and the gift markers are also in the hands. And it talks about how our gifts, when we start to move with them, that they make room for us in our lives, and they take us before great men. So even in the Bible, there is references to hands and the information that's there. Now, Socrates, he thought that there were two really important things in the hands, which was one part tells about the personality, the other part tells about heavenly influences, which is really true that we found. But anyways, my teacher, Richard Unger, he wrote a book called Life Prints. It is out, you can get on Amazon or probably in a lot of different bookstores. But he started reading hands. He just found an old palmistry book when he was in college. Thought it was like, wow, this is kind of true, this kind of isn't. But his personality is someone that once you get in a train track, you just like can't get out, you just keep going. It's they're very focused, very, so he has a gift marking for that. And he's also a Sherlock Holmes philosopher kind of guy. So for him, this was a really perfect fit. He kind of got into the track of hands and couldn't get out. Was really quite obsessed with it, and was at Stockland Yard until 3 o'clock in the morning for many years. So studying what we knew about fingerprints and all that we knew about hands. And then he took it and he actually applied it to scientific analysis, or a more scientific way of doing things, like, okay, let's look at the doctors of the nurse, that there's a marking in the old palmistry for the doctor or the nurse. And when he started looking at doctors and nurses' hands, he found that 15% of them had this marker and 85% of them did not, which is way too high to be a coincidence. 15% is even still pretty high, but it's way too low to be an accurate marker. What he found is this is the marker of the person who has a special capacity to heal, a special capacity to go with people to their next step. And so that marker is only 1 in 300. And anyway, so he's done that with all the markers. If he has not taught us anything that he has not tried hundreds and thousands of times and found to be true. So it's really quite a beautiful study, the study of hands. It's studying all of the personalities that exist in life and studying the different life paths that are available. And it puts me at a special advantage in helping people navigate their own inner dimensions, and in working with that unconscious part of themselves, because the hands report. The way that the hand part of your hand is formed is by, you have the more neural pathways between your brain and your hand than any other part of your body. And it actually carves your hand when you do particular behaviors and when you behave a certain way. So when you stop behaving that way, it goes out of your hand. Sometimes it takes a few months, but it does go out. Maybe even 6, I don't know. But I've had some stuff disappear out of my hand since I've been working on it. I've got Mark here with me. Hi, Mark.
Hi.
And I'm going to take a look at your hands.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah, it is.
All right, well, let's take a look.
Okay.
Okay, so let me grab my little phone here so I can look a little more in depth into. You know, I can tell that you're a doer and you're a thinker, and that you love the good things of life, right? So, I mean, this is just your basic orientation, right? So, you have an incredibly loyal, hardworking type of hand, okay? And very community-oriented, very fun-loving oriented because of a certain aspect of your hand that brings forward, you know, the love of the senses, the love of the pleasure of eating, the pleasure of moving your body, the pleasure of the fresh air, the pleasure of riding in a boat or a motorcycle, and also the pleasure of being with other humans and having a good time. So, yeah, so that's kind of like a basic orientation. So, you know, there's a lot of different pieces, because if you can imagine, every zone and the way that it's shaped tells a little bit about that area of life for you and how you interact with it. So, okay. So part of your life purpose is to be in the spotlight. It's a life purpose of celebrating your uniqueness, right? You're a unique guy, aren't you? You're not like every Joe. So that's part of the purpose that you're here for. You know, we often see with this particular life purpose that someone, you know, one of the criteria is having critics and also having fans. Do you have critics and fans? Well, that means you're doing a good job, okay? So it's what comes with being in the spotlight. It's what comes with doing things differently than other people do them. So often, you know, I mean, I've seen this before in, like, say, an eye doctor, and he's creating a special exercises to heal things, and the other doctors are upset. They're like, you know, I do surgeries for this. Why would I want to cure it through exercises, you know? So, but then there's other parts that are just like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, right? So this is bringing your own unique flavor to the way that you do things, right? So, and there's a place of, it's like you have to risk rejection, right? Yeah, and it's hard. Rejection is one of the hardest things to deal with in human life. But do you know how we can bypass it?
Apparently not.
Okay. It's to accept ourselves so radically and so much that no one can reject us. So that's the key, okay? And then you can stand in that spotlight and you can, you know, have the jeers and have the tomatoes and have all the love, because guess what? You get all the love and all of the adoration that comes from being in that spotlight as well, right? Yeah. So that's so you're right in, you're right. You are a model of, like, creative living, right? Doing things differently. And you're doing that. And that's wonderful. You're an example of that to every person that you come into contact with, of doing things differently. So that's part of it. Interestingly enough, too, let's see what there's other aspects of it. And part of it, too, is that we don't, as hand analysts, we don't want to give too much too quickly. Because if we give too much, then the impact is less. So, but let's look at you from the front here. Okay, so you have the archetype of a doctor, actually, which is go figure, right? Mm-hmm. Now, not every doctor has this archetype. So the thing that's really interesting about this archetype is they're just plain smart. Mm-hmm. Smart people, really good at breaking things down to the most practical move, right? Mm-hmm. And to be a doctor, you have to be able to do that, right? The thing that's really interesting about there's also an ability, though, in that to compartmentalize a little bit. So that is where you can compartmentalize, do a surgery at 8 a.m. and go eat breakfast at 9 a.m., mm-hmm. okay? And without that ability, it's really pretty hard to be a doctor, the ability to shut it off, mm-hmm. So you turn it on, shut it off. So one of the things that is really interesting, too, something that I see in your personality that is an area that you can really focus on bringing forward. Okay, so what it looks like is though you've toned yourself down a little bit. Okay, you've toned yourself down. Does that feel true for you on some level?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, because you've got a really big energy, mm-hmm. and it's a little much for people to handle sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then what happens is that when you're a little kid, when you're a teenager, and you've got a really big energy, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is just too much fire coming at me, right? You learn how to kind of mute it down. The thing that's really interesting, though, is that your natural personality is to be somebody who's very, very vivacious, mm-hmm. very full of life. So this is the way that you relate to others. You have two different ways of relating on your two hands. One is more of showing your love by doing, needing to have time alone, processing inwardly, and the other one is very out in the world and very big, mm-hmm. okay? And very much I want, okay? And the thing that's really beautiful about this particular heartline is I consider it to be a piece of equipment that you have in your machinery, in your inner machinery that allows you to be a super manifester. Because how we call things to ourselves is through through getting specific about what we want and calling it to us through our heart power. So you have like a heart power that is a manifester, okay? So the difficulty with muting this energy down is that you're not able to call to yourself the kinds of things that you could call to yourself otherwise. All right. So how do we do desire rehabilitation? Yeah. Okay, first off, you might need a safe space. You might need some safe people in your life to say, okay, I'm just going to be as big as I'm feeling, right? Okay, and this particular heartline is very self-focused. It's up to the work that this heartline is up to doing, mm-hmm. and not saying that you're not a caring person, because you absolutely are. Mm-hmm. However, getting up in the morning, this is what I want to do today. This is what I'm going to accomplish today. This is what I'm drawing to myself today. Okay, that's what this heartline is able to do. Imagine, I'm a songwriter as well, and imagine if I had to call you, Mark, to say, should I go up? Should I go down? Mm-hmm. Should I put this word there? Should I put that word there? Should I do this or should I do, that indecisive world for people that are creating things is a world of purgatory. So, you've turned this heartline into a more indecisive, other focused, and it's not its natural expression. Mm-hmm. Okay? So there's a lot of other archetypes that exist in your hand, but what's really apparent is there's a public impact in the healing arts for you. in your orientation. There's a spotlight. There's that cleverness that you have that is part of your doctor ability, okay? And all of these things can work together to bring you into a place of being a manifester of the things that you want to be manifested in the world. Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Wow.